Rick Hendrick just made a secret move that could steal NASCAR's most dangerous driver, and Trackhouse has no idea it's already over. Stay locked in until the end of this video, because at the very last minute, I'm going to reveal the one clause buried inside SVG's contract that nobody in NASCAR is talking about. One clause. That changes everything. Don't you dare click away. Before we go any deeper, and trust me, we're going very deep today, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel exists for one reason only: to tell you the truth that the big NASCAR media houses are too scared to say out loud. Every subscriber makes this voice louder. Every share puts this information in front of people who need to hear it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's get into it. Charlotte, North Carolina. Late April 2026. A black SUV pulls into a private hangar just off Concord Regional Airport. No press badges, no team colors, not a single social media story. No cameras, no microphones, no PR handlers. Inside that hangar, Rick Hendrick, the most powerful owner in the history of American motorsport. A man who doesn't take meetings that don't matter. And sitting across the table from him, a Kiwi, a three-time Supercars champion, a man who, 18 months ago, most of America genuinely did not know how to pronounce: Shane van Gisbergen. Now, you've been told a story. The mainstream NASCAR media has been feeding you a very clean, very simple, very comfortable narrative. Shane signed a multi-year extension with Trackhouse Racing last August. He's locked in through 2027. Move on. Nothing to see here. But I've been digging. My sources have been talking. And what I've uncovered is not a rumor. It is a calculated, deliberate, slow-motion power play that is already in motion. And by the time this video is over, you will never look at the 2027 silly season the same way again. Let's be honest about where Shane actually sits right now in the 2026 Cup season. Through 13 races, 283 points, 16th in the standings, one win. That win came at Chicago, the street circuit where SVG is genuinely on another planet compared to the rest of the field. One pole. Average finish hovering around 15th. On paper, that looks like a decent sophomore season. Not elite, but survivable. But that paper tells a lie. Because if you have watched even 4 or 5 of those races closely, and I know you have, you know that the results don't reflect the driving. Not even close. Bowman Gray. He qualifies 17th. He finishes 20th. The car couldn't rotate, couldn't turn, couldn't do what he needed it to do, and no amount of car control can fix a car that is fundamentally set up wrong for the way SVG drives. Kansas. This is where it went from frustrating to serious. Kansas became, according to multiple people I've spoken to who work inside that garage, the breaking point race. Not emotionally, not publicly, but internally. Kansas is where the math stopped adding up. 3 separate pit stop disasters in a single afternoon. Loose lug nuts. A botched fuel-only call that cost him track position he never got back. A jack that wouldn't drop clean on 3. 3 separate incidents, 1 race. And SVG came over the radio after that third one and said nothing. Just silence. And sometimes, silence says more than screaming ever could. Even Jeff Gluck, and if you know Jeff Gluck, you know he is not someone who deals in hot takes. Even Gluck came out after that race and acknowledged that Shane has been genuinely impressive, while Trackhouse as an organization is being outdeveloped by Hendrick, Gibbs, and the 23XI operation. That is a respected American journalist essentially saying, the driver is better than the team. And someone in Concord, North Carolina has been paying very close attention to that gap. Here's where this story flips on its head. Because Rick Hendrick doesn't just have interest in SVG. Rick Hendrick has a problem. And SVG might be the most elegant solution he's ever found. Walk through the Hendrick stable with me. Kyle Larson, absolute crown jewel. the best oval driver on the planet on his best days. But Larson is also the Indy 500 guy now. Every spring, his focus splits. Every spring, the question mark grows about whether that split costs him consistency in the Cup championship hunt. That's not criticism, that's just reality. Chase Elliott, the most popular driver in the entire sport. Merchandise numbers that embarrass everyone else. But Chase's win rate has been quietly slipping against the Toyota Armada, and the pressure on him to deliver a second championship is becoming a weight you can feel from the grandstands. William Byron, championship caliber, locked in, not going anywhere. That seat is stable. And then there's the 48, Alex Bowman's car, the most scrutinized piece of real estate in the entire Cup garage. His contract situation beyond the end of 2026 is, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, not bulletproof. There are people inside that organization who believe the 48 needs a different energy going into 2027. I'm not saying Bowman is done at Hendrick. I'm saying the door is not locked, and Rick Hendrick knows exactly which key fits that lock. This is the part that made my jaw drop when my source laid it out for me. Hendrick Motorsports engineering staff have been pulling SVG's telemetry data from the shared Chevrolet Technical Alliance servers. Now, manufacturer-wide telemetry dumps happen all the time. That's standard. Every Chevy team gets access to a broad pool of data. That's part of being in the alliance. But what Hendrick has been doing is not standard. It is not routine. What they've been running is targeted analysis, specific, deliberate, focused, cornering loads at Sonoma, brake modulation at Coda, throttle traces from Chicago, entry speed data from road courses that SVG attacks differently than any other driver in the field. They are studying him, specifically, intentionally, with engineering resources that most teams in this sport would kill for. Ask yourself one question. Why would the most successful team in the modern era of NASCAR dedicate engineering bandwidth to analyzing a driver they don't employ? There are only two answers. Either they're trying to understand what makes a road course specialist tick so they can better prepare their own drivers to beat him, or, and this is what my sources believe, they've already made their decision, and they're building the technical case that will make the contract conversation easier. Because inside Hendrick's walls, there is now a genuine, growing belief. Not a rumor, not an opinion. A genuine organizational belief that Shane van Gisbergen is the single most talented natural racer currently sitting in a Cup Series car. Not the most experienced, not the most polished on ovals, not yet, but the most raw, the most instinctive, the most dangerous ceiling in the garage. And what Rick Hendrick understands better than anyone alive is this: oval craft can be learned. God-given car control cannot be taught. You either have it or you don't. Jeff Gordon was a sprint car kid from California. Kyle Larson was a dirt track savage from Elk Grove. The Hendrick pattern doesn't change. They find the driver with the gift. Then they build everything else around it. SVG fits that blueprint so perfectly, it almost looks like it was designed that way. I want to pause for a second and talk directly to you. You watching this right now. Whether you're in Auckland at midnight, or on your lunch break in Brisbane, or you set a 4 a.m. alarm in Perth just to watch Shane race at Watkins Glen, you already know what I'm going to say next is real, because you've been watching the same races. You've seen the same gap between the driver and the machinery. You've felt the same frustration. The American NASCAR media doesn't take this fan base seriously. They think the Anzac viewership is a novelty act. They think it's cute. They think when SVG has a rough stretch, you'll all quietly disappear. They are going to be proven wrong. And this channel is part of how that happens. Keep watching. Because the contract clause I promised you at the start, we're getting there. And when I explain it, everything, every scenario I'm about to walk you through will click into place. My sources have laid out 3 possible futures, and I want you to sit with each one before we get to the master stroke. Bowman gets a restructured 1-year deal for 2027. A reduced roll, reduced pressure, an honorable exit ramp. Meanwhile, SVG completes 2026 at Trackhouse, fulfills his obligations, and in the off-season, he slides into the 48 Hendrick Chevrolet. And here's the detail that makes this scenario feel almost pre-planned. Greg Ives, Shane's current crew chief, is a Hendrick alumnus. He knows the culture. He knows the systems. If SVG goes to HMS, there is a version of this where Ives follows him through the door. Maximum continuity, minimum disruption. Classic Hendrick. Hendrick doesn't wait for a seat to open. Instead, he brokers a formal technical alliance expansion with Trackhouse Racing, one that goes far beyond what currently exists. Same chassis preparation pipeline as Larson and Byron. Same simulator hours. Same engineering calls. Same everything. SVG stays physically in the 88 car. He stays at Trackhouse. But suddenly, underneath him, he has Hendrick-level equipment. The car changes. The results change. And Hendrick gets to evaluate his investment without making a public move. Low risk, high information. Very Hendrick. This one I hesitated to include because the sourcing is thinner. But I'd be doing you a disservice if I left it out. There are whispers, quiet ones, but they're there, that a Toyota-aligned operation has made a private approach to SVG's management. A guaranteed #1 seat, 8 figures annually, full resources. The pitch being, stop fighting for scraps in someone else's ecosystem and come build your own dynasty. But here is the single fact that kills Scenario 3 before it ever gets off the ground. Shane van Gisbergen has said publicly, repeatedly, consistently, without hesitation, that he is loyal to Chevrolet. He drove a Holden his entire supercars career. The bow tie is not just a logo to him, it is identity. A Toyota switch would not just be a business decision, it would feel like a betrayal of everything he's built his career on. Rick Hendrick knows this, and he's using it as leverage. Here's the thing about Rick Hendrick that separates him from every other owner in this sport. He doesn't need to close a deal to win a negotiation. He just needs the possibility to exist. Every week that Trackhouse fails to give SVG a winning car, every botched pit stop, every mechanical issue, every race where the gap between the driver's talent and the team's execution is visible from the grandstands, the gravitational pull of Hendrick Motorsports gets measurably stronger. Rick Hendrick is not chasing Shane van Gisbergen. He's creating conditions. He's letting the situation do the work. By the time silly season fully ignites in July 2026, Hendrick's goal is simple. He wants the entire industry, the media, the sponsors, the other drivers, and SVG himself to look at the 48 seat and see it as the only logical, rational, inevitable next step. He's not writing a contract, he's writing a narrative. And narratives, when they're done right, write themselves. Now, the clause. Shane's Trackhouse extension that got announced last August. The one the mainstream NASCAR coverage treated as a closed chapter. Let me tell you what that announcement did not say. The public language was deliberately vague. I want you to understand that word, deliberately. That's not an accident. That's legal architecture. Industry sources who have knowledge of how these NASCAR contracts are typically structured at this level have confirmed that deals like this almost always carry performance-based language, threshold clauses, results benchmarks, and, most importantly, exit windows. The real operative end date on SVG's Trackhouse commitment, based on what I've been told, aligns with the conclusion of the 2027 season. Not forever, not locked, 2027. But here's the clause that nobody is talking about. There is almost certainly, and I say almost certainly because I cannot show you the document, but my sources are consistent on this. Language in that deal that allows for early termination if specific on-track performance thresholds are not reached. Not performance by SVG, performance by the team. If Trackhouse cannot provide SVG with competitive equipment, if the results tell a story of a driver being held back rather than elevated, there is believed to be an exit mechanism. Think about what Hendrick is doing now in that context. He's not just watching SVG race, he's watching whether Trackhouse hits those thresholds. He's watching whether the clause gets closer to being triggered. Every Kansas-style disaster at Trackhouse isn't just a bad weekend for SVG. It's a brick being removed from the wall that's keeping SVG inside that contract. This is the play. This has always been the play. Rick Hendrick is not going to steal Shane van Gisbergen. He's going to be standing at the door when the contract opens itself. So let me bring it all together and ask you the question this whole video has been building toward. SVG is 31 years old. He has one Cup win. He has road course ability that nobody in this garage can match. He has oval development ahead of him. Real, genuine, still in progress development. But the trajectory is upward. It has been upward since Chicago 2023. The question has never been whether Shane van Gisbergen can compete at the highest level of American motorsport. The question is, will he ever get the machinery to prove it? Trackhouse gave him the opportunity. Trackhouse brought him to America. That matters. That deserves respect and loyalty. But loyalty has limits when you're watching a generational talent get wasted on pit stop disasters and underdeveloped chassis prep week after week. Rick Hendrick has never, not once in his career, given a driver of this caliber equipment that wasn't capable of winning a championship. Larson, Gordon, Johnson, Elliott, the list speaks for itself. If SVG walks into a Hendrick Motorsports car in 2027, whether it's the 48 or any other number, he is immediately a championship contender. Not a project, not a prospect, a genuine day one title threat. And that changes this sport. Before I let you go, and I know this video has been long, and I know some of you have been here since the first line, I want to tell you that what I've laid out today is not speculation dressed up as reporting. These are sourced conversations. These are patterns that match what we know about how Rick Hendrick operates. And these are contract realities that the mainstream coverage has simply refused to dig into, because it's easier to say, SVG is locked at Trackhouse, move on, than it is to do the actual work. The question I want you to answer in the comments right now is simple. Two options. Pick one and defend it. Option A, Hendrick. The 48 opens, SVG takes it, and by the end of 2028, we're watching a Kiwi lift the NASCAR Cup Series championship trophy. Option B, stay and fight. SVG stays at Trackhouse, the team gets its act together, and he wins the championship inside the organization that gave him his shot. Type A or B? Write your case. The most passionate, most argued comment gets pinned at the top. And the next video, the one on what's actually happening inside Trackhouse's engineering department right now, and whether the people running that program even understand what they have in their car, that drops Thursday. Be here, be loud.